There we go. That's probably going to work better. Hello and good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, folks. Welcome to another Insights from the Isles. Hello, Vanessa. Got your hand up early. Hope you're okay. We'll come back to you in just a moment. Welcome along, team. Give us a thumbs up or a hands up if you're doing well this morning. I hope you're warm. Indeed, I hope wherever you are, you don't need to be warm because it is already warm. And I want to say thank you for choosing to spend the next 30 minutes and a bit with us today. Hope you're not feeling too stressed or overwhelmed right now out there. Super, super busy people out there. I know year end for many of you, of course. There's a lot going on. If you're too screening right now, if you've got a bit of multitasking going on, I hope you are smashing your goals this week. And Andrew, as always, is here with me, and you're smashing goals on the daily, aren't you, my friend?
Oh, match. Absolutely.
Smashed every day. Hello, Christine. Hello, Rick. Mel, good to have you with us. Who else have we got? Only 3 hands up. Only 3 thumbs up. People not feeling that great this morning. Well, look, we know there's a lot going on, as I said. Whips, trade conversations, business planning, range reviews. It's all going on. Andrew, what was the biggest headache? What was the biggest stress you remember facing when you were head of trade marketing back in the day?
Yeah, I mean, look, at this time of the year, obviously over here in New Zealand, it's a mishmash of financial years. So some people are finishing theirs in a couple of weeks, some do it in the end of March, some are doing calendar. But I always used to remember sales would take care of themselves. For me, it was accruals. They just did my head in at this time of the year, trying to make sure you had everything lined up and all the pots of money were, taken care of and spoken for and everything else. That was stressful.
Anyone else out there feeling that right now? Feeling the stress of trying to get your accruals sorted? You got what, week and a half left? I'm sure it's tough. Well, look, the next half an hour or so, I hope you got a coffee with you. I've got a little bit left here, so I hope you've got whatever you need to keep you through the next half an hour. Take a step back. Join us on a brief journey. Now, the marketing experts, the traditionalists out there, will tell you the basics of marketing, particularly from a brand perspective, tell us that differentiating through price is something that really only the value brands can do successfully or would want to do successfully. It's this whole notion of value pricing versus differentiation. Doing one, doing the other, doing some sort of blend. Value brands can typically leverage that pricing strategy more effectively because of the way they're positioned and do so in the longer term. But for every other brand, price is not typically as effective in terms of a long-term strategy. So how do you feel about that? How do you feel about what I've just said? Does that resonate with anything that's going on in your business right now? Does it make you feel uncomfortable? Maybe. Whatever it is you're feeling right now, lean into it, okay? Because our focus today is on avoiding commoditization of your brands. That's what we're really focusing on in this session. I'm sure no one on this webcast wants to see that happen to them. So we are concentrating very much on this notion of differentiating beyond price, particularly as inflation begins to start coming out of the market. So if you've been here before, you'll know how we do this. And if you haven't, welcome for the first time. Excuse me. We're going to take a look, as usual, Andrew and I, through some new examples that we have seen out in store in recent weeks, tell you what the shopper point of view is, and invite some discussion. So get involved in the chat. I'm sure you've got a perspective, a point of view. There's always different ways of reflecting on these things. We're going to explore some of those different points of view with you, and we're going to base our perspective very much on the shopper proof points that we know to be true. No beef and no grudge against any brand or any retailer. We're just commenting on what we've seen. We know that these posts have had a lot of engagement on LinkedIn, and we think it's a worthwhile discussion. Judging by the number of people that have signed up for this one, it's something that a lot of you want to engage with as well. So let's jump into this and get straight to the heart of it. And as we do, let me see if I can tee up a quick poll because it's very relevant to the first example that Andrew is going to pop up in just a second. So levels of promotions, folks. Are you promoting more or less than you were 12 months ago, or about the same? 3 options. Simple question, and it really goes to the heart, Andrew, of what you're about to demonstrate and visualize for us in a moment. I'm going to leave that running actually for a moment, and then I'm going to also pull up your first example. So here we go. Hopefully that's about to come up. I'm going to share it.
Ah, there we go.
Got it?
Yeah.
Okay. Take the floor, sir.
So this is really just the table setter. Because this was a post that I did probably about a month or so ago, where I was just walking through a pack and save, and I just noticed this. There was just so many price messages, so many of them on the extra low mechanic, which is the promotional mechanic for pack and save. And it just struck me that for the simple reason that about a week or so prior had been the Australian Food and Grocery Council conference, where the Woolworths CEO Brad Banducci didn't actually say anything that really struck me more than when he said he felt that there were too many promotions happening in Australia grocery. And that was something which immediately went, yep, totally agree. And I think the same thing's happening over in New Zealand at the time. And this is the sort of thing which has been around for ages. But my question, and the thing that I put forward in that post, was, why do we keep doing this? Why do we keep doing this? Because if it's not working, if it's not growing, if it's not actually growing volume, if all it is doing is really rearranging the deck chairs on the deck of the ship that we're all traveling in the same direction on, then why aren't we doing something different? And I don't care that this is a pack and save where it's supposed to be cheaper, it's supposed to be all about budget, it's all supposed to be about value. You can still do premium things in a pack and save. So again, I looked at the numbers, and the things that struck out to me first and foremost was the fact that promotions are no more important in New Zealand than they were 12 months ago. Now, we've been bombarded with messages about how it's a price of cost of living crisis and prices are going up and all the rest of it. But promotions are still no more important than they were a year ago. So if that's the case, then clearly the promotions are not really doing anything in terms of getting people to change their behavior, to do things differently. The other thing that looked at was price as the main influence. So that's a question that we ask people around, is how big of an influence on your decision making is price? And that is actually lower than what it was 12 months ago. And then I looked at the thing about how many people actually recall buying on promotion. And the answer is there are a few more people than there were 12 months ago. It's about 50-50 now, percent of people who actually recall buying on promotion. But that's still way lower than the share of sales on promotion. So clearly there's a disconnect between people who remember that it's on promotion and people who actually do end up buying on promotion. So if that's actually happening, then why are we continuing to do something so much, which clearly is just people just getting bored with it, that they're just over it and it's not doing the things.
Why are we doing this, Andrew? Why are we?
Yeah.
It's a very good question. I mean, let's throw this out to to you who are watching this webcast without pulling any punches, I suppose. But what is the strategy? What is the rationale? I think Andrew has painted some fairly compelling arguments. We've got the outgoing CEO of a very major player telling us that promotions are overcooked, overbaked, overpresent in stores. We probably feel it, that we're running faster to stand still. I just add to some of those points as well that Andrew raised. This notion of price as the main influencer of the purchase decision hasn't changed in Australia in 12 months, and it's only changed 2% over the last 4 years. Okay, across Australian stores as a total. So it hasn't changed in the last 12 months, and it's only changed 2% in 4 years. Just to put this in context. A couple of other things that have changed, I think you touched on it just then, Andrew, was this notion of price knowledge. I think you mentioned that one, didn't you?
Oh, no, I didn't actually mention that one, but that's a good point too. Price knowledge is heading south. People just know the price less and less and less.
Yes, and in Australia, the same. So remember, we're putting a shopper lens on this, and we're talking about the extent to which I, as the average shopper in a grocery store, in a supermarket, feel I know the price that I normally pay in the category. It's plummeting in Australia. It's plummeting, which is this sense of not only because, excuse me, inflation is present and distorting perceptions at that end, but of course because of the level of promotions. And so really increasing number of shoppers really don't know what that price point actually is. I've just got a couple of comments, Chris. To be competitive with competitors. Okay, we'll come back to that maybe in a moment. Big one here. Thank you, Lisa. The rationale appears to be disconnect between high level strategy and executed strategy at category level. Giving strong prices at category level for promotions is incentivized by buyers with off locations and additional support catalog. Yeah, okay, additional catalog support. Customer driven requests. What are your thoughts on all that, Andrew?
Well, my thoughts are quite simply that I know we have to do promotions. So I didn't come down in the last shower of rain, so I do know that we have to do promotions. But there needs to be a point where retailers actually, and I'm not saying that this is something which is all about suppliers, why suppliers continue to promote and all the rest of it. There has to be a point where retailers actually take a step back and say, is this actually achieving our goals? Are we actually making more profit from these types of activations? Are we actually making sure that shoppers are able to do the things that they want to do and still feel satisfied that they're getting a reasonable deal every now and then? That's my challenge that I'm throwing out on both sides of the Tasman, really, is that are we just doing what the populace at large has been trained to do for the last 20 years? And it's not working. So at some point, someone actually has to go, do we try something different?
Yeah. Lisa also added, I swear we've been having the same conversation for 20 years that we need to get off the promotional drug. I remember this well, Lisa, myself. I was a buyer 20 several years ago, and that's what retailers were saying at the time. And it's absolutely as true as it was then today. I'll share the results so you can see how the poll panned out.
More.
So what have we got? 52% promoting more than they were 12 months ago. And only 10% saying less, and the balance saying about the same. So clearly that drug is as present and as powerful as ever. Look, Andrew, you're spot on. We're not idiots. We're not saying stop the promotions. It's not about that, but it's about the balance. And it's also about the ability to take strong, meaningful, credible proof points into those conversations and put those on the table, which talk to the role of price, the role of promotions, how that is evolving or not over time. And of course, then the other thing, which I want to bridge into now, just to keep things moving, and that is what else? What are the other levers beyond price? So.
Absolutely. And those other levers beyond price are really where we as an industry need to try and turn the conversation towards, because I think it was you, David, actually said the other day that when you promote too much, you're on a race to nowhere. And who wins a race to nowhere? Nobody does. So this is the sort of stuff that you need to be able to take to a retailer and say, why don't we change the calculus just a little bit and try and move ourselves a little bit away from this endless spiral? And this is a good example, the one on the left that I saw in stores about a month or so ago over here in New Zealand. And, Kiwis will recognise this. This is the old classic chip dips scenario where you buy a pack of onion soup, you buy a can of reduced cream, and you make your own dip in about 5 seconds flat. So the point that I would make with this is that this is talking 100% to the occasion that chips are usually bought for. This is a way to premiumize the category. This is a way to actually make sure that, or to try and take the conversation away from price. You'll see in the image there are a few things that are on promotion, but what I like most about this chip display here is that none of the items that are actually being, on that hang sale are on promotion. They're at full price. It's put in front of premium. So for those of you in Australia who haven't seen it before, Heartland is quite a premium brand of chips. And right beside it, just on the other side there, is Delicio, another brand of premium chips. So this is really smartly positioned it's easy as anything, and it's pretty, pretty smart looking piece of machinery as well that's been put there. This is just an easy, simple way to make people go, you know what? I might actually do something a little bit different instead of trying to actually promote the guts out of this.
Yeah, nice, simple. You like the table tennis balls there, did you? That was straight out of your frame of reference.
Yeah, I did. But then again, people have schooled me about how the fact this is all about the fact that people buy these for beer pong. But but no, I'm obviously too old for that. But yeah, absolutely, beer pong and go hard. But for me, it was.
Have you ever beer ponged? I doubt it.
I probably did when I was.
I haven't.
20, who knows?
Well, yeah, look, you're right, and it's look, we're just picking out examples, right? This isn't to say that everyone should go down this route. This isn't to say that this is the solution, but it is, as you said, a focus on the occasion, the usage, some engagement, some emotional attachment with the category that does not center exclusively on price. And this is Bobby's just talking about how the hang cell from Nestle has been around for a number of years.
Yeah, great if it has, but the point is that I don't see enough of this kind of thing, and it's not just the fact it's about this chip dip scenario. It's about what are other categories doing to tap into this kind of thinking. That's what I think is great about this, is that it may have been around for ages, but how many other categories do stuff like this?
Yeah, and do it on an evidence-based approach. Again, we're not advocating just go and chuck out some hang cells, some clip strips, and see what happens because it's a bit fun. It's about taking in evidence and proof from shoppers in your categories and in the retailer and in the account that you want to influence, and say there is a case demonstrably, statistically, for an approach that is not exclusively price driven. We can pull out all the data. We can talk about the levels of knowledge of price. We can talk about the extent to which the average category is even playing a role in demonstrating value. And by the way, that I didn't touch on that earlier, but that's plummeted in Australia as well. The average category for a shopper plays a much lower role in determining store-wide value than I'd hazard a guess at saying ever before, but certainly in the last couple of years. What does that mean to you if we think about the notion that, as somebody said, it's all value when we go to the sessions with retailers? There is something else going on, and it is not the case that in all occasions for all shoppers in all categories, price is the only factor at play. We know it's the most important factor still, not taken away from that, but we know there are other factors, and there are examples, as we see, of scenarios where people are pulling those things out. I'd love to know how that's performing, actually. If there's anyone on the line who's been involved, maybe not give us precise dollar figures, but it'd be lovely to know how that has gone down in your category.
And I'd just like to make just two more quick points about this. Firstly, that take this example and apply it to the thinking that's going on within your categories at the moment through evidence-based, data. Chips is the number one category where it is bought in a snacking mindset. So that clearly that sort of a scenario plays, really strong into that. And it's the 17th highest category out of well over 100 categories that the shopper intends to consume like that same day. So that occasion-based mindset is really, really strong in that category. It may not be strong in others, but what is it about your category that you can actually apply to produce something of that nature? I mean, just think, for example, about, old El Paso meal kits. Put them by the mints. There's a good example of something else, which is just simple and easy, but it speaks to a premium occasion-based mindset where price doesn't actually matter as much as some other things do.
No, it's true. And I just spotted a comment here. I want to pull it out from a gentleman by the name of Simon Ford. Benchmarking to other countries, we promote more in this part of the world than anywhere else. Is it a cultural mentality? We have to change the conversation. To value or away from value. Not sure. Maybe more away from value. It's clear. It's very evident when we look at the same results that we see from shop intelligence in the UK, France, the US, Canada, etc. We're promoting much higher levels in Australia and New Zealand, and yet some of those underlying factors are not vastly different when we ask shoppers in some of these other areas. How important is price? What's the relationship between EDLP and offers, for example, as well, in terms of importance? So a lot of the stuff that sits beneath that headline would suggest that we should be doing, and we would be doing, less promoting in Australia and New Zealand, and yet we're doing more. So undoubtedly, I think there's a cultural thing there. I saw somebody commenting on being about a train. Well, yeah, I guess that's probably how it feels. And Andrew, you probably recognize that from when you had a real job at industry, that you were on a train and it's very hard to get off a fast train. I'm not saying this is easy, by the way, but there is proof that can help you.
There is no way on God's green earth this is easy, but it's a conversation that we need to start at the very least, because otherwise we'll be sitting here in 12 months again going promotions, and I don't think any of us want to be in that boat.
No, for sure. I hope, guys, you're seeing the comments, because there's some really good stuff coming in. Lisa, I just thank you for putting in your comments here. You've got some really good stuff. I won't be able to go through them all, but there's some very good thoughts coming in. Luke also says, in New Zealand, more promotionally driven for branded, given its private label share a lot less versus UK and Australia? Yeah. Well, it is true. There is I think the UK is like 40 something% private label these days. And we're not at that level here.
Definitely not that level in New Zealand either.
No. There's something in that potentially. But product for product, it still remains other angles. Now let's put up the next one. Let's see if I can find it. I've got so many panels open right now. It's unreal. Here we go. Right. So an Aussie one here for you. What are we seeing? Well, interestingly, it's something from Nestle again, I think there, but yeah, very clearly the emphasis here is on something. There is a price message there, clearly, right? And it's clear and it's evident, and that's good. But what caught my attention, of course, was the occasion, the moment, the time in the shopper's life that is being called out. Back to school, very obvious. I know it's an annual thing, it's not a new thing, but it's a nice thing to see in a world of yellow tickets and a world of let's be cheap. Now, this was an interesting one. I mean, I called it out specifically because, yeah, it stuck out and it jumped out to me. We do focus on this as an occasion. I had a lot of comments in the thread of the post about how it was, you know, it's an annual and a big event for the retailers. What was actually interesting, just as an aside, going back to what shoppers are really doing and thinking and saying in the category, the proportion of muesli bar, snack bar shoppers who have children and who are buying for children is actually relatively low, interestingly enough, under indexes versus other categories. So I found it interesting when I looked into that the association was with back to school, and the mission typically actually is stock up, is have this stuff in the cupboard, rather than I must have it for a lunchbox for a child. So there's actually another occasion in there, which is adult snacking. Could be lunchtime, could be take it to work, that sort of thing. I'd love to see that come into the fore as well when it isn't back to school. But bottom line, to come back to the topic for today, this is just an example of heroing the occasion. Yes, you still got the price message in there, right, Andrew? But the occasion is the uppermost that's going to hit people in the face.
Yeah, absolutely. If this is all about, again, tapping into an occasion. Now the question is, though, is it actually the right occasion for this particular category? And I can, before I get to that, though, there is just one comment that just happened there as well that, you know, comes from Chris. Thank you, Chris. Small suppliers can't afford to have those hanging point of sale in store. Yeah, you're right. They can't. So if small suppliers, this is basically what I would say to all small suppliers that I work with, if you can't afford to actually be able to tap into those kinds of activations, what else can you do? So what other things are you able to do? Are you able to do some kind of social media activation? Are you able to do some kind of, you know, radio or God forbid, even TV potentially? I don't know. But what is available to you in order to be able to put the kind of messages out that you need to put out? So it's less about the mechanic in this example, and it's more about the message that That was a cold store, wasn't it? There was they were trying to actually put the message across for. So that's the first thing, and secondly, as a part of that as well, if you're a small supplier, your packaging is your best and most obvious avenue to putting forward the message you want to put forward. So just keep that in mind. I've worked with a few suppliers in the past where we've had these kind of conversations, and they have changed their packaging to best put forward the message they want to put forward to shoppers. So that's the first thing. Second thing, though, is this occasion. Is that actually the right occasion for that category? And yeah, it may well be the right occasion, but there's also a significant other occasion in that category, isn't there, David?
I think I said it, did I?
Yeah, you did. Adult snacking.
Yeah, adult snacking. Yeah, there you go. I was like, oh, what was the other?
No, you did. But the point is that that's the same on both sides of the Tasman as well. Adult snacking is just as big. Actually, in New Zealand, adult snacking is even bigger than child lunchbox snacking. So a little bit of a missed opportunity potentially through not necessarily having the right insight as to what actually is the occasion that floats the boat for most people. Yeah, I know time of the year was important for that one. Absolutely. But outside of that back to school period, is there enough actually happening in the adult snacking activation space?
Yeah, I don't think you see a lot of that, generally speaking. I mean, again, we spend a lot of time roaming around stores, don't we, you and I? And I'm sure a lot of you do on the cast today as well, but don't tend to see as much of that in general. Also, don't tend to see. There was a question. I'd love to see what small suppliers are doing in store. Well, yeah, I don't tend to see as much of that from small suppliers. Is this question of cost is coming through? Obviously, right? It's about cost and opportunity. Thank you, Jennifer, for saying if cost is prohibitive, you can sometimes share this sort of thing with another supplier. Okay, great. This particular example, again, this is just an example, and it highlights the heroing of the occasion. There's a whole bunch of different ways, aren't there, that you can activate in store. You will know them because you're talking to your buyers and your trading partners week in, week out, and there's a rate card and there's a menu. What are the avenues that are open to you? There's aisle, there's shelf, there's pack. So this isn't the only avenue. And of course, everything does come at a cost. And I suppose the other part of that, then, the equation is, well, what is the cost of continuously promoting or promoting heavily very, very regularly? And we'll come on to the longer term cost from a brand perspective, which is what I positioned at the top of all of this, is what is the long-term impact to your brand of this kind of promotional drug? What is that cost to your business? There's a short-term cost, of course, anyway. How does that actually play off? And I get the point about, well, we haven't got any guarantee that it's going to work. But I also get the point about, well, look out in the market for information that's going to support your decision making. There are a number of sources that will do that. Shopper Insights give you that angle. This is not a plug, by the way. It's just to say that there are proof points that we know a lot of businesses are pulling into their strategies right now to give them some confidence. There is no guarantee in life, but you go and you influence your buyer with a solid story, a credible story, and a relevant story based on proof points.
Yeah, and I keep going back to the pack side of things. So like I said a little bit earlier, I've had a number of conversations with small suppliers in recent years around, are they making the best use of that canvas, which is their pack? And, if you're a box, think about the way it's being displayed. So is it going to be displayed standing up or lying down? So in that case, what is the more, better use of the space that's going to be most visible to a shopper? Don't even forget about the outer. All right. So with cut cartons becoming quite prevalent in a lot of places, especially over here, is your outer packaging actually delivering the message that you possibly want to give? Now you're in control of that as a supplier. You are in control of that. The retailer doesn't control that space whatsoever. So that's where you have the most ability to actually change the conversation and put forward a message that you want to be giving to the person who is picking it up at the shelf.
It's great. So I mean, it's spheres of control sits right in there, and then you start to get into the spheres of influence beyond that. Let me chuck this one out here, team. Value versus differentiation. Let's look ahead. Let's imagine 12 months from now. What do you think? In the next 12 months, will trade conversations focus more on value or differentiation or something else. Pop it in the comments if you think it's something else.
And while you're choking there, David,
Yeah,
I'll just talk about that comment that's just come up from Mary. Thank you, Mary. So she's asking, what is your view on where digital tactics fit into this? I mean, she's talking about on-site, not social. I actually think that has a massive role to play in the future. I mean, that's where the world is heading for sure. I mean, there's already plenty of cool things that I've seen out there where, you know, you walk past a transmitter in a store, and suddenly you get pinged with messages, or on sort of the way like Shazam works or that kind of thing. I think that's absolutely fantastic, and that again, if that is a more cost-effective manner to transmit, see what I did there, transmit the message you're trying to put across to shoppers, then go for it, 100%, because that's the way that a lot of people are consuming content these days. Oh. What's happened to your sound there, David?
I was just coughing and spluttering, so I turned myself off for a second.
Good on. Yeah, good on.
Mary does say on-site, not social. I suppose that could be potentially alluding to retailer site, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Yeah, retailer website.
A retailer website. Okay, in that case, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we've got data which also talks about the click side of things as well. So in some categories, the pop-ups clearly do not need to be price-led. They can be message-led. So, there are things you can do with algorithms, for example, when someone selects an item, that straight away there's a pop-up saying, do you want this? It's the whole, do you want fries, with that kind of mentality. Again, it's about understanding what gets bought with what. It's about, how likely is a shopper to be thinking about that particular occasion when they're shopping on an online scenario. All these sort of things play into that real area where you can do things differently, which is not simply about saying, hey, I'm on special, therefore you should be paying attention to me.
Well, the verdict is in from 130 odd of you, and 65% of you are of the belief that it will still be value-led conversations in the next 12 months. But 33% of you, that's important. There's a third of you who see that the focus, and you believe the focus is going to shift to differentiation. So we'll see how that evolves. We'll check back in on this topic in 6 months. There's another model actually that we created. We haven't touched on this in the last 12 months or so, but it specifically looked at 8 different levers beyond price that can be relevant for shoppers in different categories. And it mapped the relevance of each of these. 4 that are more product orientated, 4 that are more experience and experiential in terms of inspiration and new ideas. This is a really, really good way if you're sitting down at the strategy table and you're trying to work out, how do we get off this drug? How do we move to that differentiation conversation without positioning ourselves as uncompetitive, without pricing ourselves off the shelf? That is a really good model, and we'd be able to hook you up with that if you drop us a line after today. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing that one. We're going to go to the last one, Andrew. And this is a little one that I put on, which garnered a bit of attention, huge amount of conversation. And what are we seeing? Well, we are simply seeing a very nice brand of chocolate. I love Tony's. The salted caramel is my favorite. Stick it in the chat if you've got a different one. And this was in Aldi, and I saw it at $4.99. Lee loves it as well. I saw it at $4.99 and caught my attention, of course. It usually retails for about $8. It transpired upon a bit more research that it was on a twofer at Coles at this time. And I wanted to shout out to the Remedy Drinks folks, because a few of those guys got involved with this big conversation, and explained that this was selling through some exclusive lines, some limited edition lines, a bit short on life, a bit overstocked, and that was the rationale. Now, appreciate that and appreciate the input. A lot of comments there in that thread as well around, well, what's the long-term play? And I think there was a lot of focus on the sort of short-term, getting through the stock, getting something back on that, and the immediate P&L on that. And I guess what I was looking to myself was, again, this idea of, well, what does this mean in the longer term? I now, for example, had never seen Tony's at that price. I now have in 2 places. How does that impact my desire to pay full price for the product in the future? Interestingly enough, as well, in Aldi, this is really good because Aldi block chocolate shoppers are relatively highly disposed to paying extra for quality. Average block chocolate bar in Aldi typically is about £2.99, something like that. So £4.99 pushes that on quite nicely, and you've got this nice premium brand in there. So great from an Aldi perspective, great for an Aldi shopper. The question here is, okay, what happens when this comes off? What is the seed? Is there a seed that has been planted in terms of that brand which wasn't there previously? Andrew, I think you're about to say something. I'll cut you off there.
Oh no! Oh, I was just waiting for you to finish because that was a really valid point of yours. But I do have some thoughts on this, and my background is in Red Bull. That was the last company I worked for before I joined Shopper Intelligence many years ago. Red Bull is one of those typical, well, it's not typical, it is basically, the Alma, the absolute, ultra alpha male kind of thing in regards to, being protected with the brand. And I cannot conceive of any scenario where a Red Bull brand manager would have allowed that to happen. Now, that may well have changed in the 8 years since I've left them, but if we ever had dated stock, we basically destroyed it rather than put it out there to sell for the risk of it actually devaluing the brand or changing people's perceptions around what the price was, because we commanded a price premium relative to the rest of the category and wanted to protect that at all costs. So again, I'm not saying that what Tony's done here is necessarily bad, but I'm saying from that perspective of a very, very brand focused business, they would not have done that. Absolutely would not have done that. So my real calendar around this to me is that, okay, this one example may not have actually compromised the value of the brand and the price premium that it holds, but how many times does it need to happen before it does?
There's sounds like when you say it, and your former employers would have chucked it in the ground. Sounds like a pretty extreme case, but maybe not one for the environmentalists either. So
absolutely not. I didn't say it was a good idea, but
I could argue that because, of course, this brand is, and I'm not saying anything against Red Bull here either, but this brand is very overtly about the environmental credentials and so forth. However, it's I suppose it's a play really on the short-term tactical versus the long-term strategic position. Incidentally, as this conversation evolved, I had other people commenting that they can regularly get Tony's for £2.99, £3.99 in their local convenience store or job off outlet somewhere. So there's obviously some of that going on, which is again practical. This is the world. This is the reality of trading. It simply comes back to this notion of, in this instance, as you said, Andrew, and the whole point, I guess, of our earlier point was around promotions and the extent to which one promotion is fine, 2, 3, 4, promoting every month, promoting every quarter gets us to the place we are today, where price satisfaction overall is still not great, price awareness is low, perceptions of value at category level are diminishing in the sense that average category plays less of a role in determining value across the store. So it's not benefiting at that level, even if it is giving this short-term hit. And there's a lot of evidence, there's a lot of people commenting to us that promo activity isn't hitting the heights cycle on cycle that it was in the past. Not an easy solution, no silver bullet, but proof points change minds. Proof points change the conversation, and proof points often, not always, but often influence a different route. If there was a way to add value back into the category and it was plausible and credible and it was supported by some good information, Andrew, I can't imagine there'd be many retailer supplier combinations out there who wouldn't be minded to at least consider that as a route. Can you?
No, I can't. Absolutely, I can't. Now, and again, I want to go back to the point around we're not, naive. We do know that pretty much every single conversation that happens between a retailer and a supplier right now is around what are you going to do from a promotion point of view? What are you going to do from a price point of view? one conversation in this area saying, what about doing something different, is not going to change their mind. But just back to your point, David, about, you promote once, you promote twice, you promote 17 times. You have that conversation twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times. Eventually, something is going to change. Something is going to change the calculus. And that's what we want to see happen. Because quite frankly, from a shopper point of view, these price metrics that we see now, both sides of the Tasman, they're not looking good. They're not looking like we're going to be able to trade our way out of these problems by just going deeper and deeper and deeper. The shopper in New Zealand and Australia has been trained to do this for 20 years. Something has to change, and hopefully we can help you be the first step on that road. But it's not going to happen with just one meeting or one engagement. It's going to take a lot of engagements with a consistent message.
Thank you, mate. Okay, looking at the time, folks, I know you've got all that stuff to get back to and get back to the day job. So we're going to wrap this one up. Exactly as Andrew said, for most of you, for most of us, most of the time, there is one way that this will go. For the rest of us, and for those particularly who said 1 in 3 of you would like to be focusing more on differentiation, if you want to join that 1 in 3, I suggest drop us a line, and we can talk to you about those levers beyond price that we see in your category. Something else you might be interested in, I was thinking what we can share this time round, that measure, which is price as the key determinant or most important influencer of the buying decision. Stick a yes in the comments now if you'd like to get a perspective on categories that are increasing in that. Preeti's on it already. Bonus of Preeti will give you something extra for being the first one on it. Categories that are increasing on that measure and categories that are decreasing on that measure across ANZ. So really important factor. And the first step, we've mentioned a number of these measures, but the first one, which will give you a very strong indication of the trajectory as far as what's going on in shoppers' minds in your category. Andrew, thanks as ever, mate. Always good to see you, and beautifully shorn head. I love it.
Yeah, it wasn't too shiny, is it?
No, it's delight. For me, it is, because I'm very, very much in the same boat. But anyway, I just thought I'd comment on that before we go. Thank you, everyone, for your time, and we will see you for another Insights from the Aisles very, very soon. Take care. Have a great end of financial year. All the best.
Thanks, everybody.